So let's take a few minutes and review what we've been talking about. Great. Hey, Jen. So we mentioned a couple of core points in the last episode. We said that the Torah was written before the world was created. That's premise number one. If the Torah was written before the world was created, that means that the holidays were identified before any events that were attached to them. There was going to be a Pesach forever, and then we end up connecting it to the leaving of Egypt. But there was always going to be a Pesach. Hi. Okay. There was always going to be a Pesach. Very important. There was always going to be a Sukkot, right? Okay. So we started with that. We also said that different times of the year have different inherent power attached to them. Where we say we say that the Jewish people are not subject to mazal, the Jewish people are not subject to luck, and this is a massive back and forth between the rabbis. And Maimonides comes out, and Rambam comes out very, very strongly against this. He says we are not subject to luck. Luck is something arbitrary. What we are subject to is the hand of God. Okay. Within the hand of God, and this is where it gets a little nuanced, it's not so straightforward. Within the hand of God, there's certain inherent powers to certain times of the year. So it's not that Nisan is lucky, for example. It's Nisan this month, or the month this month, was endowed with certain power as a result of what God wanted. And that power has a certain impact on us, and it has a certain impact on the people around us. Okay, so there was the Torah first, then came the world. A1, if there was a Torah first, it means that the holidays preceded the world. So there would always be a Pesach. A2, Pesach would always come at a time of year that was endowed with certain things. Pesach can't be in Tishrei. It would never be in Tishrei. And Rosh Hashanah, how are you? And Rosh Hashanah would never be in Adar, right? Good, great. Okay. We also said that there's a very strong connection between the months of Adar and Nisan, the month we just came out of, the month we're in now, and there's a very strong connection between the holidays of Purim and Pesach. Okay. When we enter the month of Nisan.
I'm sorry. Kippur and Purim don't have a connection?
Who?
Kippur
and Purim have a connection. Purim is, Kippur is a knockoff of Purim, we say. Kippur is a knockoff. Purim is the more important day of the two. And our rabbis say Kippurim, right? Kippur is like Purim. So Purim is the higher level day. Why is Purim a higher level day than Yom Kippur? You would think the opposite. But why is the day of Purim, huh?
We were saved.
We were saved on Purim, right? But what else makes it higher? What makes it a higher level day? What would you say? How are you? Huh? It's joyful, exactly. Perfect. So when we have simcha in something, when something is joyful, it's automatically on a higher level. We don't want to be fasting. Fasting is a b'diavad, it's a fallback position. When something is joyful, it is happier. Okay. We mentioned that when the month starts, what do? We immediately try to find a fruit-bearing tree, and we say the beracha on the fruit-bearing tree. What's the beracha that we say? Let's look at it very quickly again. It's a very beautiful beracha, and it's obligated to men and women. We say that Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shelo chiser ba'odamo klum. What does that mean? That nothing was left out of the world, nothing was left out. Ubarabo briot tovot. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu created perfect things, perfect physical things, vilanot tovot, and perfect fruit-bearing trees. For what purpose? Le'anot bahem bnei adam, for our enjoyment, for our pleasure. Good. So we said we walk into this month, the month of Pesach, right? The first thing we do after we welcome the month is we find a fruit-bearing tree, ideally two together. We go up to the tree and we say the beracha that God created perfection, that God created beauty, and the beauty, how are you, Terry? The beauty and the perfection created was created for our benefit, right, Felicia? It was created for our benefit. For, that it comes after Purim and not before. Excellent. So why? Excellent. You tell me. You kept yourself from the joy and you put yourself from not eating and whatever. Why wouldn't I understand that the trees come in the spring, but why wouldn't we be doing something of the sort after Purim? Fantastic. You tell me based on what we learned. What did we learn the struggle is on Purim? What's the struggle? Hi, Rob.
Hi.
Oh,
Hi.
great. Okay. Hi. Ellen, hello. Hi. Okay.
Hi.
Good to see you guys. What's the struggle on Purim? Physical and bring it into the spiritual. Beautiful. Exactly. Right. We said the struggle of Purim is that Achashverosh, leave Haman out for a minute. Achashverosh was pushing us to move our lives more and more to the physical and less to the spiritual. Right? So, Sarah, what that means is as follows. It means that there's a balance, right? We live in a physical world on purpose. That's where God put us. But what Ahasuerus attempted to do was move the needle over more and more so that our overwhelming focus would be physical, practical, and then there would be a little bit of spiritual on the side. And in fact, he succeeded. And because he succeeded, Haman was able to bring out a decree to destroy the Jewish people. Because God says, if the Jewish people are overwhelmingly focused in the physical, then nothing here. I didn't do anything. We're not doing anything. It's a waste of time. And therefore, Haman has his platform. Good? So what's the point? What's the takeaway from Purim? The takeaway from Purim is, as we mentioned, each of us to evaluate our focus and time and energy and commitment and try to move the dial back, right? To spend more time learning Torah, more time doing chesed, more time with family, love, and relationships, and less time in the practical. Good? Now what happens? We enter the month of Nisan, the month of Passover, a couple weeks later, and the first thing we do is we bless the practical. So I'm just strengthening your question, right? So how does this make any sense?
You're taking something practical and lifting it into the spiritual.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. So the point is, some people are going to come out of Purim and say, I'm done with the practical world. It doesn't work for me. I'm done. And the reality is that doesn't work. Because if that was meant to be the model, then we wouldn't have been put here. We would have been put in heavens, some places, purely non-physical people. So what do we say? We look at this beautiful tree and we remind ourselves how it reminds us of life in general. And we're going to beautify all things practical as much as we can. So what would be an example of that? We'll come out of Purim. We understand we don't want to be overwhelmingly practical, right? We want to be more spiritual. Then we're tempered with that in the beginning of the month of Nisan, where it says, wait a second, this practical is nice. Beautiful is in. Beautiful is good. So how do we blend the two? What would you do?
We do both.
How do you do both?
We bless the moon when it comes out.
We bless the moon, right? Well, actually, we can talk about that, yeah. And what did King David do? What did King David do when he wrote a lot of his Tehillim? What did he do?
He pleaded with Hashem.
Huh?
He pleaded with Hashem.
Yeah, but what did he do? He went, King David went to different places, right? He went to different places. We know famously he went to En Gedi, right? And he went to the lower portion of En Gedi, found himself Mima Makim in a low place, and he looked up at the bluffs. He looked up at the mountains, so to speak, and he wrote certain things there that are very telling. So where do we end up? We end up in the most challenging place. We're not supposed to run away from the practical. The practical is good. It's beautiful. It's meant to be for our pleasure and benefit. We're not supposed to run away from it. We're supposed to infuse it with spiritual. And that's the hardest game. So let's put this into very clear terms. What are we talking about?
Does it mean to recognize God in all the
Recognize
physical
growth
things?
in all the areas. Great. How do we also, good. How do we put spiritual into the physical? What's a very practical thing? A beracha.
Uh-huh.
Beracha, beautiful. Beracha is very, very practical, right? When I say the beracha mindfully, that's a different game. I say the beracha, I'm paying attention to what I say. That's a game changer, right? Hi, how are you? All right. You brought the baby to Barkai, now she's here. Fantastic. Nice to see you. So it would have been easy to be all spiritual. It would have been easy to be all physical. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want for us? Take the physical, appreciate the beauty, appreciate it, and endow it. It's fantastic. Now, beracha is a great example. How else do we do that?
Is it like on holidays when we beautify the house?
Right, holiday, beautify the holiday. We make a beautiful table, right? Good. What else? What else?
And we learn a month before the holidays.
We study a month before. Good, but talk to me more about the very practical that we beautify. What do we do with the synagogue? We build a beautiful building, right? Well, what do you mean? Shouldn't we be separate from physical beauty if we're going into a synagogue? Shouldn't that be purely spiritual? Shouldn't I just check out from the physical and get my head focused around God? The answer is no. The answer is we're going to put you, God says, in the most challenging place where we want you to appreciate beauty. We want you to bring spirituality into beauty. You have a beautiful home, make it a home of chesed. You have a beautiful home, make it a home of Torah. You have a beautiful home, make it a home that's happy. Don't not have a beautiful home. Not to have a beautiful home would have been much easier. So, after we come out of this holiday, where we commemorate the fact that Ahasuerus tried desperately to get us really, really geared to the practical, and he succeeded, HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the rabbis come back and say, wait a second, don't go crazy the other way. You're supposed to be living in a beautiful, practical world. On a gorgeous day, appreciate the day and thank God for the ability to see it, to enjoy it, to feel it. Those are nice things. Good? As a result of that, the rabbis attach a very significant portion of Kabbalistic reading. When we say the Birkat HaIlanot, it's nice for the women to say it as well. And what we believe we do with that Kabbalistic reading is we believe that any souls that are in a not great place because of their not great focus in life, we can help elevate them from those places with this reading. So the beracha takes a second. The Kabbalistic reading takes several minutes. But to the extent that someone can read it, even if they don't fully understand it, it's important to read.
You're supposed to have someone in mind?
No,
In general?
no. I mean, God forbid if there is someone, yeah. But it would be, it's a person who got stuck in the physical, got stuck in the practical maybe. As a result of that, after the person's 120 years, maybe the person, is suffering on some level, maybe his soul is suffering. So we pray for that to end. And the Kabbalistic rabbis say that this beracha coupled with these Kabbalistic readings will empower that to happen. Okay, cool. Okay, so that was a quick review. Now, when we move a little forward into the months, we have what we call Shabbat Hagadol. What is that? What's Shabbat Hagadol? It's Shabbat before Pesach, right? What happened on that day? Yeah?
Splitting of the sin.
Huh?
Splitting, no, not the skin.
No.
Wrong.
What? Perfect. Very good. What did they do? What did we do? God commands us to go through the streets of Egypt, right? At that point, we weren't strictly in Goshen anymore, right? In the original place that Sarah Imenu was given, that Pharaoh gave her, that we were placed in. We had spread out dramatically by this time. It's 200 years later. And we're all over Egypt. And as we know, the god of Egypt was the sheep, the calf, that thing. So that's what everybody worshipped, including us. So we worshipped those little animals as well. So what does God command the Jewish people to do? He says on the Shabbat, before the final night in Egypt, before that night, we want you to get a calf or a sheep. We want you to drag it through the streets of wherever you live so that everybody sees what you're doing. We want you to bring it home and tie it to your bedpost and let it stay tied to your bedpost for 4 days until Thursday, when we're going to slaughter it in the middle of the afternoon in full public view. Now, what's going on here? By the way, we're still slaves. The Nazis, so to speak, are still in the guard towers with the machine guns focused on us. 10 of the plagues passed already, but we're not free yet. So what's going on here? What's the purpose of this and what's happening?
To show our devotion.
To show our devotion, right? Because whose God are we slaughtering?
There. Oh, ours.
Ours too. Yeah, we were bowing down to these animals as well. So what do? We take the God of the Egyptians, who is also our God in our own minds, right? We drag it through the streets. It can't defend itself. Where's all its power? We tie it to our bedpost. Why tie it to the bedpost? Put it outside in the stable, right? Why are we tying it to the bedpost? Because, huh? I'm sorry?
It's not going to do anything for you.
It can't do anything to me, right? And I'm going to see it morning, noon, and night, right? I'm going to sleep with the animal right by my bed. And it's powerless. Shocking. They must have been going crazy. How does that make any sense? What do you mean? This is the God. They're worshiping this God. The Egyptian worshiped the God. Makes no sense. How can it be? I tied it to my bedpost. I'm going to sleep. The God does nothing. It can't even free itself. Huh? What happens over time?
The 4 days, but over time, what they're seeing and what they're realizing is that separation also.
Excellent. That's exactly right. That's exactly what they're seeing and what they're realizing. They're seeing and realizing that this was all nothing. Good. Now, there's a midrash that says as follows. That says when we brought these animals in, the firstborn sons of the Egyptians confronted the Jews and said, "What are you doing?" Now, in ancient time, the firstborn sons were the gentry. They were the leaders. They were the up-and-coming power. It was all vested in the firstborn sons. So when the firstborn sons approached the Israelites and challenged them, they're the up-and-coming generals and noblemen and kings and so on, right? What did the Jews tell them? They tell them, as they were instructed to say, that we gathered these animals together. We're going to slaughter them on Thursday. After we slaughter them, God is going to kill all of you, and then we're leaving. Now, this is not written in the Chumash, This is the Midrash, which means it's the higher level. So why is the Midrash taking this thing and blowing it up like this? All it says in the Chumash is, take the animals, drag them to your house, tie them up, and in a handful of days, slaughter them in broad daylight. The Israelites go to the up and coming power, right? The assistant general, the assistant king, whatever they might have been, right? All of them, the bechorim, the leaders, up and coming leaders, and they tell them straight out, we took the animals, your animals, your God, by the way, we're gonna slaughter it in public, and after we slaughter it in public, God is gonna kill all of you. And what does the Midrash continue? It says that the Midrash continues, it says that these firstborn went to their fathers and they said, did you hear what's going on? And their fathers told them, nonsense. And then what do? They take up arms against their fathers, and there's a civil war. And the Midrash says that the civil war precedes the Makat Choshech, the plague of darkness, and the Makat Bechorot. So they were already destroying themselves before the night of the 15th when we leave.
Because they believed it, they believed.
They believed it. Yep, they believed it. Huh?
What happened on the Shabbat?
Excellent. So that's exactly, hi, how are you? That's exactly the question. So now it goes like this, right? We have this very curious commandment, right? Very hard to understand. But maybe you want to say, it's just we had already experienced 10 plagues. This is the thing. We're now moving forward, right? But what's the deal with this thing of grabbing the animal? And why tell me this story? By the way, does the Midrash mean that it actually happened? Maybe yes, maybe no. It doesn't matter, right? We don't know if the Midrash happened or not. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But if it did or it didn't, we want to understand the story as if it did. So what's going on here?
It sounds like the Israelites are taking action with their own hands now. It's not just Hashem giving them makot. They're actually doing something physically.
Great, good. So that's one important thing. Good. What else? What about the firstborns going against their fathers? What is that telling me?
It sounds like us, like you're going against God or something like that.
Right. It's copy paste, right? They taught us to go against our God, right? Now, let's just add to what you're saying. When Paro comes out with this crazy scheme to kill the firstborn baby boys, right? What does he say? He says, if we don't kill them, a male leader will emerge from them and encourage them to revolt from within. They'll join our external enemies and destroy our empire. Crazy, wild scheme, wild idea. But he sold it and people bought it. And they slaughtered God knows how many thousands of Jewish baby boys, right? They threw them in the Nile, right? Okay. So what's happening now? What's going on here? What's happening?
Getting back at them?
We're getting back at them. How? What? Build on your point. What's going on here?
Was mostly everything came out of the mouth of Paro, the words of Paro.
Right.
That's really how it happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here it came out of his mouth that he said that the firstborn are gonna come up and revolt, so here.
That's exactly what happened. Perfect. And whose firstborn revolted? His. His.
Out of his mouth that.
Exactly. Beautiful. So how do you want to put this together? What do you want to do with this now? How do you want to put all these pieces together?
All that happened on the Saturday before the Pesach?
The Saturday and 3 days after. It was a busy day. It was a summer Saturday. It's a long day. What do you want to take from this? What are you saying?
Purim.
Huh?
Sounds like Purim,
V'na'afochu. It sounds a lot like Purim, right? Explain that a little more.
No, like what she said, everything, it's Hashem had his hand and everything happened, but just in a different way.
Exactly. What he predicted that would happen to us happened to him. Okay, very good. Beautiful. And what does that mean for us? What's our message for that?
And Hashem is in the details.
God's in the details. Good. What else?
Be careful what you say.
Careful what you say. Good. What else? What else? Right? Yes. And good. What else?
Us that needed to take that first step also.
It's us that needs to take the first step. Good. Now, I'm going to add one more piece. And then we'll
Rabbi,
chunk together. Yeah.
it reminds me of when the prophet wanted to curse Israel, but he couldn't because Hashem wouldn't let him, so he had to keep blessing us. It's like we can't get cursed, or we can't get unless Hashem allows it.
Great.
So
But when-
if Paro wants to say, everybody's gonna, all the firstborns are gonna be killed, what Hashem is gonna turn it into a blessing for us.
Beautiful. So beautiful. So now blow this up. I want you to blow it up, and you'll start to just. We mentioned a lot of things in the last few minutes. They'll start to get much more clear in a minute. I want to add one more piece of lack of clarity, and then we're going to pull everything we said together. The story of the Exodus from Egypt, right, is not just the story of the Exodus from Egypt. It's the story of every Exodus and every redemption, whether it be a micro Exodus and a micro redemption or a macro, right? Good. So that means that when I study the story of Egypt, when I recount the story of Pesach, I'm not talking about then. I'm talking about now. I'm talking about now. I want to give you an example. I didn't see the October 8th movie yet. I didn't see it, but a few of the guys in my class were telling them the story. They said as follows. They said that what became clear in this movie titled October 8th is that everything was premeditated. Not only was the slaughter on October 7th premeditated, but everything that followed. In other words, the next day, they were already demonstrating on college campuses. They already had the signs, the anti-Israel signs. They said Hamas and company was building this for 15 years. They seeded it for 15 years that there would be a day or more, 20 years, whatever the thing is, that there would be a day when they would commit slaughter. And immediately after that, there would be massive anti-Jewish, anti-Israel riots and demonstrations all over the world. Paying people, indoctrinating people, planting people, putting literally the signs there, right? So what October 8th movie is saying is that there's a massive amount of work done for something like that, something tragic like that to happen, right? Okay. We are standing on the other side of that issue. We're saying that we want the redemption. We want God's help, which means there has to be a massive amount of work done on our side to make it happen. If the Jews were told 4 or 5 days before the redemption, go out, put your life on the line, go against everything you believe in. You worshiped this little sheep yesterday. Go against it and drag it through the street, tie it to your bed, and get ready to kill it. What must they have been thinking? I don't know what I am. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what my life meant. I don't know what to believe in. They must have been in a state of chaos, right? Good. So I want to say that because the exodus of Egypt and the experience of Egypt is a model for what will happen throughout time, we can take that model and we could lay it over with October 7th and now this October 8th thing, and we can take away the following. And what we have to take away is, what did I do? what did I do in light of this situation? We know what our enemies did. We know what they did. They prepared for 20 years, right? When a couple of my students told me the story, I said, holy cow, what did I do? Zero. I did zero. I empathized, I cried, I prayed. All true. Did I drag the baby sheep through the street? Absolutely not. Did my life get turned upside down? level?
הוא יודע שאת,
Huh?
שאני מה?
שאת מסתכלת?
Turned over?
כן, הנה.
No.
אבל
So-
אני אסגור את זה.
What
אני
story is highlighting to us is it's not about only what I felt. What did I do? Why do I have to drag the animal through the street? I already made teshuvah to a large extent because I experienced, the Jew says, the 10 plagues as well. October 8th. It's not enough. What did you do to change the reality? I'm going to go first. Nothing. I did nothing. And I think if Mitzrayim is the paradigm, of all redemptions, we're definitely seeing something in our own time in this remarkable event. I know in my life that the most traumatic and tragic experience for the Jewish people was the Yom Kippur War, where 3,000 Israelis were killed in 3 weeks, right? In 3 weeks. That's the equivalent. At the time, there were 3 million people in Israel in 1973. That's the equivalent of 30 million Americans getting killed in 3 weeks. If we're 300 million people, that's 30 million Americans in 3 weeks, right? By the way, this is worse. October 7th is worse. So this is not about a guilt trip. It's the opposite. Because again, I'm putting myself first and foremost in this consideration, right? What are we doing to build the Geulah? What are we doing? Now, we're going to do what we do on the spiritual level by recognizing God's beauty and immersing that physical beauty with more spirituality. We're not going to run away from the physical. We're going to immerse our physical time and experiences with more spirituality. And everybody should pull out a pencil and a pad one day this week and say, you know what? How do I immerse more spirituality in my physical? Is it about something as obvious as saying a beracha more slowly and carefully? Is it about going to the beach and opening the Tehillim book and reading? Is it about staring at the sunrise more? I don't know. Oh, and how else do I add more of those chesed and Torah learning hours? But above that, I think the message of this midrash is, and the message of Shabbat Hagadol is, what's my role in the redemption? What's my role? And I think it's a fantastic, it's not a question to bring about guilt. It's the opposite. What is it, Sarah?
No, it's to empower you, know you could do something.
It's a question of empowerment. Exactly. It's meant to empower me that what I do means something. I don't know what's going to tip the scale. Who knows what's going to tip the scale? It could be any individual effort, any familial effort. But if the enslavement and freedom from Egypt is the prototype, not a one-off event, but it's the everything event throughout time, that it speaks to me on a very practical level. And because we just lived through this crazy thing, this unprecedented thing, it begs the question of, did I drag anything through the street? And if I haven't yet done it, can I? And if so, how? I don't have the answer for me. But when I heard the summary of this movie, you got to learn from everything, right? I heard the summary of this one. I said, wait a minute. They prepared for 20 years for their redemption. This is their redemption. If they murder Jews, that's their redemption. What am I doing? What am I doing? Great question. And again, it's not, in Judaism, we don't raise these questions to feel bad. We raise them to feel great because we have the power to do and to impact and to affect. So, good. Something to think about. Okay. We're gonna put a period on that, and we're gonna move over. We have a very interesting thing. Okay, perfect. A very interesting thing that our rabbis write, and you may or may not like this, but they say that the person who does a very, very rigorous check of his or her home for hametz after a very rigorous cleaning will not sin the entire year. Heather, what is it? What's going on here? You want to rip this page out of the book, you guys. We're not reading that. What is that? Huh? This is yeah. So what does this mean? And who brings it down? Obviously, our favorites, the Arizal, the Kabbalistic writers. What do they say? I'm going to read you from inside. Kodam Nel Abba Asab Nisan, before the 14th, Surhim Nanakot, the Habed et Hadrei Abayit, right? We have to clean all the rooms of the house. V'hachatzer, and the garden. B'nikoi Yisodi. Wow. Nikoi Yisodi means you're scrubbing it like it was never cleaned before. Yisod is foundational, fundamental. It's not a typical cleaning. Nikoi Yisodi. You got to really scrub it, right? Elbow grease. Good. Kedei shelo yishayer shum chashash chametz b'rishutam b'mei Pesach. That there shouldn't be any possibility of anything of chametz being there before Pesach. V'chen yesh liftok b'kisei begadim. We have to check our pockets, and of course the pockets of children and their backpacks that they take to school. That there's no chametz there. Good. V'shuv en sarich l'botkam b'leil yudal l'oraneh. Okay, good. V'nizhar mimashu chametz b'Pesach. Listen to this. This is a massive bomb. It's mind-boggling until you just go at it a little bit, which we'll do. V'nizhar mimashu chametz b'Pesach. The person who's very cautious about chametz in Pesach, muftach lo shelo yecheta kol hashana. What does that mean? What does it mean?
That he's gonna be careful with all his sins.
It's promised to him or her. What? So they bring the Arizal, right? The editor of the Kabbalah, and they bring the Be'er Heteb, who's a Rishon, right? About 1,000 years ago. And it says like this, that a person makes a very hardcore scrubbing, so to speak, and then beyond that, spends a lot of time doing the check that night, 14th, this year's the 13th, right? Spends a lot of time doing the check. That person will not choteh the whole year. What does that mean? Will not do what? Sin. Good. What type of sin is chet mean? Right, you remember this? We did the different levels. What does it mean? Okay. Caught you one time. Okay, good.
Without knowing.
Huh?
Sins without knowing.
So let's see. Avon is knowing. Lo alenu, somebody intentionally knows the wrong thing, does it anyway. Pesha, God forbid, is somebody knows he's doing the wrong thing, but wants to really throw it in the face of God. God forbid, that's even more rare. What is chet? Chet is when we're just a little lackadaisical about it. We can learn the halakha, but we don't. We can be a little more careful, but we're not. That's chet. Chet is, the rabbis parallel it to, it's like the sand that slips out of the crack in the hourglass, right? It's really not so noticed. It's not so obvious. It's easily rationalized. It's easily, dismissed. And our rabbis say that chet is the biggest deal. Chet is the biggest challenge of a person. It's the stuff, I know I could do this better. Nobody's really going to notice. No, it's not such a big deal. Everybody does it. I've been doing it a long time, yada, yada, whatever it might be. I could call somebody, I can open a book, I could learn the halakha. Okay, we do it this way, we don't do it that way. It's that kind of stuff. It's the stuff that's not horrific. It's the stuff that's subtle, right? So Heather, why is it a problem? Why do our rabbis say this is the greatest problem for a person? Exactly.
What?
Say that again?
You could fall into it, accept it as your normal and not challenge yourself.
Exactly. So our rabbis say that the person who's really rigorous with the checking, with the cleaning, really the cleaning and then the checking, won't fall into this thing. No, that right now, talking about literal. Good.
I'm thinking, I'm with you. On that.
But one leads to the other. Excellent. So talk about how. Yeah, yes. Okay, great. So for people who don't remember that, repeat that thing. Half a penny.
People look at who could judge and who can't be a judge, right? Is that
Yeah, yeah.
So if somebody steals a minimal amount, that's still okay, but it speaks to their character.
Right, beautiful. So you're allowed to steal, right? The minimum that a person is liable for in stealing is a penny. So what did they do at the time of before the flood or Sodom type? They would steal half a penny at a time. Steal half a penny. Wait a minute, steal another half a penny. Wait a minute, steal another half a penny. Nobody can bring you to court because you're moving right around the system. By the way, what did they call that? What do we call it? We call it Hamas. Oh man, what's the name of the terrorist organization? Hamas. Because when a terrorist organization is successful, they go right to the edge of terrorizing people, of murdering, of destroying. They go right to the edge and then stop. And by the way, Hamas was brilliant at that. They went to the edge, they slaughtered people, but they didn't go so far as to trigger the response that they should have got because they're brilliant. They're terrorists. That's what a terrorist does. Right? Good. So when a person, lahavdil, when a person is very sensitive and zahir and rigorous with the checking on this physical level, we hold that it moves the needle in the person's mind and heart to be more rigorous and demanding in everything. It creates a different level of watchfulness, a different level of awareness. It breaks the half a penny paradigm. And therefore, if the person who does a thorough cleaning and a thorough checking becomes different, their mindset changes, their standards and values move, and therefore they become much more watchful. And the stuff that slips through the cracks will basically not anymore.
So why wouldn't you say spirituality is more than the physical? So that's more spiritual.
It's more spiritual, but it's both, no?
But I would think spiritual, it's definitely both. I'm not
Right.
saying no, but I would think spiritual would be more effective to the person than.
Okay, nice. So beautiful question. So Sarah's saying, okay, if you want me to change my mindset, let me change it spiritually, right? Let me get to a greater awareness. Excellent. So how does this do it? Great question. How does this do it? What do you say?
Constantly doing it, it's gonna eventually seep in.
Right. Great. And what do you call it when you do something outward and it changes your inward perspective? There's a word for that. I don't remember the term. But when you do something physical, right, it changes the mental, it changes the emotional. I don't know, it goes out, comes in instead of the opposite. You would think that if a person feels something or thinks something and then acts on it, that's the thing. But from what I remember, and I forget the term, if you do something externally and you do it significantly, it feeds back in and it changes how you think and feel. So we have this gigantic possibility, and that is that if I check for chametz really rigorously, every pocket, every corner, every drawer, every room, the garage, the car, the whole bit, I change my mindset about things. Now, I want to compound the question for a minute, right? What happens right after Passover is over? That night,
We eat bread.
we run back to bread, right? What did Bikol Chalim? Huh? No, we don't go back. We fly back, right? Bikol Chalim used to do a thing with the pizza. You had to bid on the first pizza, $5,000 donation, right? We rush back. So now tell me the whole story. 1 second. You want me to get rid of this thing for 7 days, by us 8, let's call it 8 days, okay? You want me to get rid of this thing for 8 days. In fact, the halacha is that even though normally, if there's 59 parts of one thing and 1 part of another, the 59 overwhelms the 1 and the 1 disappears, right? If a little bit of meat fell into a dairy pot of something, right? And you couldn't spot it to remove it, and there were 59 times in volume, it's as if the meat is not there. Well, what do you mean it is there? But it's not there. That's our halachic assumption. In chametz, it's not true. If the 59 to 1 happened and the meat disappeared or the chametz disappeared the week before Pesach, we hold it's choser v'neur, that it comes back on Pesach. So we can't go with that thing. Point being, we eat chametz every day of the year. It's the staple of our diet. It's the cornerstone of our diet, right? Wheat and grain, cornerstone of our diet, right? So what are you doing here? What are you doing, God? You're taking it away for a handful of hours. You're putting this massive impact to finding it and scrubbing it out of everything, and then you're throwing me right back in? What's the message? Why? What am I gaining?
Training yourself
I'm training myself out. Good.
to care about Torah mitzvot, to care about Hashem, to have Hashem in our lives, and yeah, you go about your daily routine afterwards, but you need to have that rigorous training so that it will stay with you
Fantastic.
the rest of the year.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, but the only.
Yeah.
The only thing is.
What's that?
The only thing is.
Yeah.
Does the penalty of the chametz suit?
It's karet.
Yeah.
Right.
Isn't it death or it's karet?
It's much worse than death, darling.
To put on a different island?
And you're cut out of the system. The person is out of the system. When everybody else comes back for another round and another round, the person is out. It's a disaster. Right? Good. So tell me why. Why is it?
I think it's like even a little more, like you're cleaning, you're not allowed to have this thing for 7 or 8 days because Hashem told you you're not allowed to.
Right.
Then he tells you are allowed to. It's purim again. It's elevating the physical. When you are allowed to have it, you're supposed to have it. You should
Great.
have enjoyment from it, and you should raise it to be elevated.
Super. So what am I doing? So you're perfect. So what am I doing? Couple what you and Jane said together to answer this point.
You're honoring God by having chametz right after.
I'm honoring God, and what else am I doing?
You're infusing the spiritual into the physical.
I'm infusing the spiritual into the physical, right? And I'm acting with something that I don't understand, right? That I don't fully understand and can't reason through because of my commitment to something. What does that mean? That's a massive point. I am going to do something that I don't fully understand, that I can't fully reason because I've made a commitment. What does that mean?
Also, when you just do
It's
it.
exactly a chok. That's exactly what it is. So what's the upshot? What's the big deal? It's in everything. How is it in everything? How?
No, I just think, saying, what's the upshot? I think the upshot is everything. It's a relationship with God.
It's my relationship with God, it's my relationship with me, it's my relationship to my children, it's my relationship to everybody. It's our purpose. Right. So it's the Hulk thing blown up big time. The Hulk thing means that I'm going to do something that has been mandated to me by someone I care about. It could be God, it could be somebody else. I don't understand why my child needs this. I don't understand it. Who cares if you don't understand it? I don't understand if my parent needs this. How many people have I spoken to who I've said, stop ordering your mother around? This is her home. This is where she wants to be. You don't know better than her because you're younger and more physically robust than she is. You have no right to tell your mother what's right for her. Where did you see that in the Torah, for example? Where did we find that? Oh, she shouldn't live in her home anymore. 1 second. She's there for decades. It's her stability. It's her foundation. It's her memories. Where do you even come off to say something like that? Well, that's an example of purging the notion of chok. Chok means unconditional love. Unconditional love. Unconditional love means I put the needs of the other first and foremost, whether I can rationalize it or not. So what you guys are saying is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, no chametz. And he tells us, if you're serious about this thing, you will learn how to commit to something greater than yourself. And when you're committed to something greater than yourself, you won't slip into any dumb stuff. And that's a massive lesson. And we want to be committed to things. Love is greater than any people who are engaged in love. Of course it is. Love with a child is greater than the parent and the child. Of course it is. Love between man and God is great. If you took man and God and you added it together and you added the love in, 1 + 1 + 1 is not equal 3, it's equals 13. And that's the way it works. So to your points, when I do something like this out of hook, you know why I'm doing it? Because I love God, period. Do I understand what's going to do? No. But I'm moving my level of awareness and sensitivity, and I'm not meaning to be dogmatic here. I'm meaning to be very practical. I'm moving my level of awareness and sensitivity vis-a-vis my core relationships to a fantastic level. How many times do you have to, excuse the term, suck it up with a spouse or with a parent? A lot, for good reason, because that's what the relationship calls for. And even though you may not understand the person's needs in that case, you have to honor those needs anyway, because that person needs you to do that. I can't mandate my son to do what I think he should do if he doesn't have the tools to do it yet. I see this all day long. Oh, but he should be doing that already. But he can't. He can't. He's 21. I don't care if he's 41. He's not tooled to do it. Do you love him unconditionally or you love him conditionally? If you love him unconditionally, you'll give him the time and the tools. If you love him conditionally, you'll keep breaking his head. So when we do something like this, we're expressing our unconditional love for God. But I would say, excuse me for saying it, more important than that, we're expressing our willingness to go into something unconditionally. And that's a massive thing. When you tell somebody you love them, is that conditional or not? I see it all day long with parents. It's conditional most of the time. One father sent me a list on Sunday. What's today, Tuesday? Sunday or something. Last Sunday, a litany of things that he was unhappy with his son. This long. He's going on and on and on. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to hang up the phone because this conversation is a total waste of time. And I'm not going to hear you berating your son anymore. not now and not at any point in the future. We're done with this. But I'll tell you what I'm willing to talk about. I want you to, after we hang up the phone, I want you to put together a list of all the beautiful elements in your child. I want you to put together that list, and then maybe I'll call you back. I see the list. Kid's a gorgeous kid. I know the kid. I know he's a gorgeous kid. Is he where the parent wants him to be? No. Who cares? He's 21. Maybe it'll take him till he's 41. After I read the list, I called the guy back. I said, here's what we're going to do. You're going to love your son unconditionally for the next 12 months, and you're going to take your first list and bury it. And then after you've loved your son unconditionally for the next 12 months, despite the things that he does that you don't like, then we could get on a call and talk about it some more. But we don't know how to do this. And it's a critical thing to love unconditionally, to commit unconditionally. It's a very big thing. And it goes back to what the two of you are saying. Do I understand the Hametz thing? Not really. Who cares? What I understand is I made an unconditional commitment to something. And that level of sensitivity and awareness, God willing, will flow to every other relationship and change my relationships. We're so tough. We're so critical. Let's stop. Let's stop. Let's stop. By the way, this child, this friend, this whatever, isn't that, do you love that person forever? Of course you do. Okay. So why aren't you doing the opposite? Are you happy with everything he does? By the way, why just take the God model? God isn't happy with everything we do necessarily, but does he unconditionally love us? Unconditionally. And does he love us even when we're way, way, way beyond the pale, right? One of the, it's a long conversation, we'll mention it in a minute. One of the fascinating questions that our rabbis bring up is like this. They say, God forbid, no person did something wrong, right? And deserves to be punished for the thing he did wrong, right? What about until the punishment happens? Will the person benefit from the love and beracha of God? The person was sentenced, so to speak, right? No, to a specific thing, right? Based on something person deliberately did, right? Now, in the meantime, we say that there's, this kapara, which means that there's a pause, that God always gives an atonement period where he pauses things to give the person an opportunity to realize and redirect. But during that period, does the person get God's beracha or not? Fabulous question, no? Person was sentenced. The sentence has been, what's the word? When you commute the sentence, sentence has been commuted for a period of time, right? So God's not going to do anything. He's not going to exact. We're going to finish in 2 minutes. God's not going to exact. You have, what do you have today? A bridge?
No. Something else.
All right, 2 minutes, we're done. So God commutes the sentence, right? But while he commutes the sentence, does he still give me boundless beracha?
Yes.
The answer, does that make sense?
No.
It may,
You have until the last second to be saying teshuvah and grabbing onto Hashem.
excellent, very good. Excellent, very good. Over here, the person could have made teshuvah, didn't. The person that, yeah, okay, Yom Kippur came, and Itzumo Shel Hayom, for example, just use our example, the power of the day commuted his sentence, right? The alta power of the day, real quick, right? The question becomes, but in the meantime, does God give him all of his love? He's a convicted criminal. Huh? How come? You're right. How come? How come?
That's what we don't know.
I'm sorry?
I think that's he's separated.
That's what parents do for their children? All right, we're recorded. This is recorded. And that's what parents should do for their children. Yeah.
What you're sort of touching on is where that needle is, and that's where society has gotten to how people do things, how they parent, how they handle things in that situation.
Great.
No, that's where the needle sort of, you have to bring it this way.
Yeah, I agree. And this is the primary thing. I want to finish with one thing. We had a beautiful, very beautiful Shabbat in West Hill. It was so special. A lot of people came, former students, husbands brought their wives. It was really a very special day. And, we ended up talking about, it wasn't when I thought I was going to talk about, what we ended up talking about, we had a Torah-based parenting conversation, not conversation, learning. And one of the things that we touched on was this notion of unconditional love. And I don't know how many people get it right. In practical terms, I don't know how many people get it right. We talk about it, we aspire to it, but unconditional love means, in the God context, and we have to read everything from God, man, to us and each other, the person is deserving of punishment, the person failed, the person did the wrong thing. I fully love them with all my heart and soul, even with that.
Wait, can I just say one thing, because it's still not answering my problem.
Okay.
If you have bread in your house, or you eat bread or whatever it is, I thought it was chayav mita, but you're saying it's karet.
Right.
Fine. When we accepted the Torah, it was Naaseh v'nishma. We know that.
It was not 7.
It is,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So we're used to that concept of
Yep.
Naaseh v'nishma. But to actually, why does that have to be the end?
Right.
The world.
I'm telling you why I think one possibility, and we can probably find more. I think the one possibility is to teach us unconditional love. Unconditional love means I don't know why chametz is a trigger for this horrific punishment, lo adenu. I don't know why, but if am I going to express my unconditional love? Yes or no? If I'm going to condition it, then it's not unconditional love anymore. It's something else. And I want to say that in order to merit the relationship with God that Passover promises and enables, I have to first be willing to say, I don't get it, but I'm going to do it anyway. The same way with this father. I don't understand why he has these needs. Okay, you don't. Maybe one day you will. So should you qualify your love for him until you understand it? No. So I don't understand fully the chametz thing. Right? What I do understand is that God decreed that this would bring me to a heightened level of awareness that would impact every single thing I do, every decision I make throughout the year. Pretty super. That's an elixir, right? That elixir will change my mindset, will move my emotional gauge, and impact positively every single thing I do. Do we understand how exactly? No, but we have a sense, right? So that's what the opportunity
But
is.
that would explain, I think, Sarah's answer, because if it's gonna impact every single thing you do, then and it's to the negative, then the punishment is fitting the crime.
Right, beautiful, excellent. I love that idea. In fact, I want to go with that idea, and we'll wrap with this. If the person, though, then is not exacting and aware and sensitive, right? Like the checking of chametz will enable the person to be, and is lax with those sins, the chataim, is lax with that thing. That's why he's going to end up in karet, right? That's based on what you're saying. Very, very nice. So to wrap it all up.
Creates energy.
Huh?
When you're doing the cleaning, it creates an energy that affects you spiritually too.
Fantastic. It's called zehirut. We're going to go home. So skip the game. You're going home to clean. Now we all became champions with cleaning. She should be, yeah. It's an opportunity. That's exactly what it is. It's an opportunity.
Sorry, I have a thing to say. Most people nowadays, we're very different than people were before, have housekeepers.
Mhm.
And the housekeepers do it and we check it.
Right. So it's not enough.
Not enough.
It's not enough. Not enough.
We have to clean the oven.
Yeah. No. And there has to be, and I know it's hard because everybody has a million things, and I'm not trying to be a wise guy, but what the rabbis are talking about is, and it's not specific to the women, That's another thing that has to change. That's another thing. The men should be partners in the thing. The sons should be partners in the actual cleaning. They talk about a very saintly rabbi who went into his garden and started digging holes in the dirt.
What is he looking for?
What are you looking for? What are
What
you
is
looking
he?
for?
Yeah,
He wasn't going to find any chametz there. But so what was he doing?
it's just being more. with
That's
the-
right. That's right. Because he wants to create what he wants to raise his level of awareness to a higher level even more if he can.
So you expect the women, really, I'm serious, to do all the cleaning? and
I
all
don't
the
expect
cooking?
anything. I didn't write the book. This is not my book.
Their head on the table when they get to the.
Doesn't mean that the housekeeper can't do the first cleaning.
That's right. Yeah.
Go and
And check
clean
this out.
and check.
That's better.
Go and clean and check. You don't have to do the first cleaning, maybe go after clean.
I'm not going to get into
I
that.
heard recently that, I don't remember who, someone said that, that today we got lost, that Pesach is all about cleaning and we're not
Right.
doing other things, that it's all about the clean, we're taking it we're losing the holiday through just by the cleaning.
I don't know. It was probably a lady who said that, but I don't know. I can't vouch for that. I can't vouch for that. I can't vouch for that. But I will say there's a lot more to Pesach, but this idea of chasing down the chametz, even though you may not find it, is a very beautiful idea. And I think it creates a different level of self-awareness, sensitivity, and a notion of commitment based on unconditional love that massively changes a person's life and relationship.
But it's also what makes us Jewish, to follow all these traditions and all these rules
Yeah.
of every holiday and all the Shabbat.
Right,
That's an
right.
essential part of Judaism.
Right, right, perfect. Great.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you. Whoever's on Zoom, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was awesome. Awesome. See you soon.